Right, so we've just received a parcel. I'm going to open this now and then we'll see what's inside. Let's just hope I'm not scratching it. Okay, yeah, that's it. Ooh, here we have it. Okay, well, that is concerning. Let's take a closer look now. Right, let's begin with the very first feature that is relatively easy to spot, and that is the visual effect of the dial, or more specifically the sunburst finishing of it. As you can see, the sunburst on the authentic watch is really smooth. There are no sharp lines visible. Everything, just flows very nicely and is even out. The replica is doing a too bad job here either, but if you have them, right next to each other, you can see how the replica sunburst is more harsh and the lines, or the sun rays are more visible here. Therefore, the effect is, just less smooth and just way more pronounced. Besides that, I have to say that though the sunburst is not too great, they really do nail the exact shade of green here. Right, moving on to part number 2, let's take a look at something equally quick to spot when you have an authentic watch with you. The difference in the finishing, or, let's say brushing of the bracelet here. But again, to be fair, when you zoom in, really, really close, you would not think that there is, going to be that big of a difference here in terms of how it's going to look. I mean, you can see right here how difference in brushing, or let's say the way it was carried out, is only rather minor, I would say. But still, it seems to make a huge difference when you zoom out again, because look right here how the difference in brushing creates almost, a little bit of a different color on the bracelet. The light reflects very differently on the replica. It is a much cooler, I would say like a silvery tone, whereas the authentic Rolex has ultimately a more smoother surface and brushing, which results in a more kind of like a more warm toned silver in this case. I guess it comes down to preference here, but I could see how some would even prefer a more cooler toned silver. But anyways, the brushing on the replica is still shockingly good. And if you do not take your time to test it in, great lighting as I have here, you will not be able to see this. Okay, for our next point, we are taking a closer look at the printing. Lots of people think that they will find mistakes on the printing right away and start, looking for things like typos or, just letters missing or whatever. But those days are so long gone. So as we can see here, the printing really is not bad at all on the replica. But if you put your authentic watch right next to it, you can see how, just overall the entire printing is just a tiny bit too thick in comparison. Everything else, is correct. The spacing, the font that is being used, the placement on the dial. Perhaps I need more practice, but if someone would have only shown me a close-up picture of the replica watch, without the authentic one next to it, I would not have been able to say whether this is a fake or not, because, though it is thicker in comparison, the printing is still super sharp and very clean. Right, before we continue with my next part, I want to take the time and thank the sponsor of today's video, Chronext. Chronext is an international online pre-owned watch retailer with over 32 brands and 800 models, providing pickup locations and lounges all over the world for you, making it a perfect place not only for people who just started with watches, but also seasoned collectors and enthusiasts to shop for their watches. And right now, Chronext is offering up to 20% off of their selection of unworn and brand new Omega watches for you. And on top, you can also use my code Jenni2024 to save extra money on top of that. As with all watches from Chronext, they have been checked for authenticity by a professional watchmaker. And on top, Chronext gives you a 24-month warranty for extra peace of mind. I have bought through Chronext before. I got my Rolex Yachtmaster 37 from them, and I can absolutely recommend Chronext if you want a fair price and, more importantly, peace of mind when buying watches online. So that is my code Jenni2024 with an I on chronext.com for an extra discount on your next watch purchase. Thank you again, Chronext, for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to the next part. And we're going to continue with another printed part of the dial, the date disc. And for this, I was actually very surprised to see how the difference turned out, because it was not how I expected it to be. Because what you see here, the one with the very smooth surface and sharp print, is in fact not the authentic watch, but the replica. Yup, the authentic watch disc on a Rolex has a linen-like texture. That's the best way I could describe it. It is not smooth at all. So yeah, Rolex went for a bit more, kind of texture here, whereas the replica did not. Another perhaps minor detail is the crown on the side of the case. As with most things on this watch from, afar, there seems to be no difference at all. It's, the same size, everything just looks the same. But when I get my ultra macro lens out, you can totally see how the CNC milling machine of the replica factory produced some really, really rough outlines and edges, whereas the authentic watch has a much smoother and just very much cleaner edges on its crown. And I have to say it again, this is something I would have never picked up with, just my eyes. What I did was I was just simply checking and comparing every feature of this watch with the replica with my, ultra macro lens to see where the differences are. Anyways, let's continue with the Rolex coronet on the clasp. Perhaps one of my favorite things about a Rolex clasp, because I really like the little crown so much. I just think it looks very cute. So as you can see, the coronet is made from one solid piece of metal. The edges are smooth and so is the surface. Everything is even out here. So now if we take a closer look at the replica, we can see that they did not pay too much attention to detail here at all. The edges here are, same as the crown on the case. Rather rough, and literally on top of that, the surface area is very uneven and very rough looking. I can imagine how some people would, get away with it here and just say, it's a sign of wear, whatever, in some cases. But yeah, I still think this is a very interesting fact. And before I forget, I want to mention that I made sure to use a, more or less unworn replica to avoid, any confusion here with, signs of wear versus, actual errors on a replica watch. So yeah, this is not from wearing the replica, but the way it came out of the factory here. Next up, we are going to look at a very tricky spot to film for me, so keep that in mind. The rehaut engraving of a watch, or a rehaut. It's this vertical ring on the inside of a watch, and Rolex has the watch's serial number engraved in this one, as well as their brand name going, around the entire ring. Each letter is lined up with an hour or minute marker, and though this used to, be a tell on previous replicas, I've got that in my other video, the letter's not being lined up. This one checks the box right here. So the only difference here is the level of sharpness of the engraving. The authentic watch's engraving is, very clean, whereas the replica's engraving looks a lot more rougher than that. But, still everything is aligned, and that would not be a tell. So, right. Okay, so next up is one of the easiest, quickest, and if not safest way to tell them apart. The bezel action. What is that, you might ask? Well, the bezel on a Rolex clicks very smoothly, but also very precisely. There is no play here. There's no back and forth. But now look at the replica. It is way too easy to twist, and you can even, wiggle it back and forth a bit. This would never happen on a Rolex. Perhaps only if it was, truly broken, but that is an entirely different problem in itself. So yeah, if you want to test it, make sure to twist the bezel around and see how it turns out. And lastly, we are going to focus on another, handling error on the replica, which comes down to the movement being used here. Because when you start using the crown to, set your watch, you can immediately tell and see and feel how this goes way too easy with a Rolex. I know, this might be kind of hard to explain, but there's always the perfect amount of resistance when, for example, pulling out the crown, you putting it into the different positions, setting the watch, etc. But on this fake one, everything just goes way too easy. It's kind of the same way the bezel is working too. It's just too little resistance, and you feel like you're going to break this thing in no time. So I was being very careful here. So don't only test the bezel, also make sure to try out the crown too. Okay, now that we have looked at the 9 major differences between the latest Rolex Submariner Super Clone and an authentic one, I want to quickly cover the features that are no longer a reliable way to tell them apart, to clear up any confusion there might still be around. So first, and I unfortunately still get this a lot, the little laser engraved crown on the crystal is no longer, and has been for quite some time, a way to tell a fake from an authentic watch. Lots of people are very quick to point out that, as a safety precaution, Rolex lasers a crown into their crystal to, authenticate their watches, and that no one else has been able to do this or has the production facilities to do that. But super clone and replica production facilities have been doing that for years. The ironic thing here is that sometimes it is even more legible and easier to spot on the fake watches. It's kind of like they wanted to make it more visible, so people are quicker to say you can see the crown, so this is an authentic one. So yeah, This is no longer a way to tell them apart. And next one is the bezel color. And only a couple of years ago, you could tell that the replica producers had a hard time, replicating the exact hue of the green on bezel, with the black. This isn't that big of a problem, but the Hulk is a special case here because of this very, very, very specific kind of green. But as you can see here, there's virtually no way to tell them apart, only by looking at the bezel color or markings, as they are pretty much the same here, even in great lighting conditions. And here you have it, 9 ways to tell a replica from an authentic one. And let me stress one more thing. Though all of these points seem very obvious, on the screen, and except the ones where it's about, handling the watch like setting or twisting the bezel, they are super difficult to spot if you do not have an authentic watch right next to it to compare it to. And at the end of the day, this video is not me demonizing replicas or, the people who wear them. As I said in the beginning, to each their own, who am I to judge? I just want to prevent people from falling for scams where, others are only trying to pass on a fake watch as an authentic one to make money. That's where and I think everybody else should draw the line here. And this is all I have for you today. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments down below. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. I have also linked my super compilation of all my real versus fakes that I did in the description box down below and up here. And if you don't want to miss out on any more videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel. And then I will see you in my next video. Bye!